Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gridiron Review's final mock for the 2022 NFL Draft. I'm Zach, that's Jack, and we are glad to have you for all things NFL offseason. This will be our final, again, mock. That will be our first two-round mock. We were hoping for three, but we instead will note some prospects at the end of the round two that could have gone, that are steals at this point, and things of that nature. We're going to start right off with our first pick, Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock, and one that we've had for, I believe, two mocks now. Jack?
We have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Ike Ekwonu, the lineman out of North Carolina State. We know that there's a lot of hype around either Hutchinson or Trayvon Walker going one overall. However, we don't see it. We don't think that either one is necessarily a fit, and because Zach looked at the edges, I'll have him touch on that after. But right now it's got to be about Trevor Lawrence. Think what you want about him. Doug Peterson is an offensive mind, and he was brought in because Trevor Lawrence has to work. He has all the physical tools. He has the IQ to play the position. He was talked about amongst the likes of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. This has to work. You overpaid for Kirk and Zay Jones, but they are weapons that were brought in. They brought in Brandon Scherff. They just signed Cam Robinson to an extension. And you're missing a guard and now a center due to the Linder retirement. And we think that they take Ekwonu, who most people have listed as a tackle, but he won all conference at guard during his time at North Carolina State. And just watching his tape looks like he's going to be a better guard than he is a tackle in the pros. Zach, what do you got to add here?
I think you just need to look at the recent trend of young quarterbacks who got hit too much. Look at the Bengals, what they've done all season. They basically reworked the whole line. The Chiefs did the same thing a year ago with Mahomes. When you have a guy that you think is special, and this will be a common theme for the first 5 picks for us, at the quarterback position, you have to make it work, as Jack said. And Hutchinson, we do like. I don't think he is an otherworldly prospect, but he's a very good prospect. But it doesn't matter. You're not bringing Doug Peterson in. You didn't fire – well, you fired Urban Meyer for different reasons, but it's all about Lawrence and the offense. And the defense, this is a deep edge class, so you can find value in the second round and later that you probably can't find at the offensive line position. But we're gonna move on to the Lions, who take Aiden Hutchinson. Again, we've had this. If Hutchinson doesn't go 1, he's got to go 2. I personally think the Trayvon Walker hype is way overblown. I don't get it. Yes, he's an athletic marvel, but he did nothing on, he had 2.5 sacks. My comparison for him is someone like Rashawn Gary, although it's not exact, but Gary, even coming out, was considered super raw, had 5.5 sacks in his final full season before his senior year, where he missed a couple games. It's just taking a guy that is basically a huge project in my eyes. He's got a high motor, sure, he's an insane athlete, yeah, but there's plenty of examples of those guys that just do not work for reasons that they have a lot more development than others. And if you're taking them with the top pick, the top 3, the top 5, you are really setting yourself for a monumental bust potentially. Now, when he gets picked in our mock, I'll go into what I think the unique situation that's going to involve. But the Lions take Hutchinson, his high motor, his demeanor, everything seems like a Dan Campbell guy. He fits more into the Lions system than the Jags. And the Lions need a little bit of help, but they have in different areas, but they have a lot of picks. And this is one where they can, they don't have that quarterback in place that you need to protect. And I would be shocked if they went quarterback here. It would be a mistake to go quarterback here. So we have them going edge. Jack, you want to add anything?
No, pretty much as Zach said, we just think that he's a Campbell player. I mean, anyone can look at the highlight from Ohio State where he tells the guard to come at him and absolutely launches him 5 yards back. I mean, if that's not Dan Campbell, I don't know what is. But moving down the line, pick 3 is the same as the last mock as well. We have the Texans going Evan Neal. Like Zach said, this is about the young quarterbacks. And for Houston, they got a steal of Davis Mills in the third round. Even if you don't think that he's the long-term answer, you at least got to give him a second season. Look at what he did with a high school team around him. The blind side is good with Tunsil. Neal played guard as a true freshman, I believe, at Alabama. So if you really want to kick him inside, I'm sure he can do that. But most likely he'll bookend the other side and hopefully keep Mills off his back as he tries to prove himself as the Texans franchise guy. Zach, anything?
Just that I know a lot of people have, although we are, for the record, seeing Evan Neal more and more as the draft is a day away, but the people predicting edge here, why? I know that this is supposed to be a deep edge class. I think it's a good one. An edge doesn't help you like a Pro Bowl edge and a Pro Bowl tackle. For me, the tackle is more important because if it's not Davis Mills, you need to be able to convince a quarterback that to come here, and it starts with, can you hold me up? Will I be getting hit 50 times? And this is the step in the right direction. Again, this is a deep edge class that goes well beyond the first round. So the Texans are probably thinking we can get value, really good value and better value at the edge in the second and the third round versus whatever tackles may be available. Again, the Jets, Charles Cross, we have had this one before as well. This is an early tackle run for us because the Jets are, again, in the same situation that the Texans are in and that the Jags are in. Zach Wilson needs to work, but maybe the Jets more than even the other two are in more desperate need with reports that Mekhi Becton they're souring on him and that there is even heavy reports suggesting he'll be traded on draft day. But you want to actually talk about Cross?
Yeah. So for us, we typically have the Jets taking a corner. We might have had Cross early on. For us, this is, I guess you'd call it a panic pick. You see the first two tackles off the board, and you see who's behind you: New York and Carolina, New York again, and then even Seattle down the line. And it just seems like Cross's hype has been building up over the last couple of weeks. And if you're New York, Cross most likely doesn't fall to you at 10. I think that, to Zach's point, especially with Becton, his status in the air, you need to take the guy that's going to protect Zach Wilson. And I was watching, I think it was NFL Network earlier, and they were saying that Zach Wilson has been traveling across the country to go throw with his receivers. Like, he's not having everyone meet up. Like, he is going to each of them and throwing with them so that they can stay with their families. And it's just going to show the type of player that Zach Wilson wants to become in this league. And he showed a lot of promise going down the stretch. And if he can continue the leadership like this and they bring in a guy like Cross to protect him, he could take the Jets to potentially the playoffs. And against the AFC bloodbath, he needs to stay off his back.
And in the best case scenario, Becton does stay, and then you have two cornerstones. Whichever one wants to play which side, there's no,
figure it out later.
Yeah, two first-round tackles on your team is nothing to be upset about.
Moving down the line here at pick 5, we have the Giants taking Sauce Gardner. This is another pretty typical pick for us. Bradbury, so far it seems like trying to move him has just been a whole lot of hype and not a lot of movement. I don't know what you're really going to get from at this point with him being on the market for so long, but regardless of whether you keep him or not, you bring in Sauce Gardner, who is probably the best man corner coming out this year, and he will fit into Martindale's physical man-to-man style of defense right away. And if Bradbury's there, then you have your 3, and if you don't, you still have your 2. And Martindale he's going to love this guy in New York.
This brings us to 6. Now, we are in the boat after we thought about it longer and longer that Carolina wants to tackle. It has to be true. I mean, this quarterback class, while we do like Sam Howell a lot, in general there is scenarios just like in this mock where the quarterbacks fall. They fall far. for a reason. I mean, there's no can't miss prospects. Howell even has his concerns, as does, Pickett is ultra safe, but there's a lot of questions about his upside, with myself included being one of them. Willis has a massive floor and a massive ceiling, and for Carolina, Matt Rule doesn't want to get fired, so I don't see that happening. And we initially had Carolina doing a shock pick here and staying and taking Sam Howell. However, we instead came back and we talked about it. And Carolina will probably take a trade down in this scenario if Cross isn't here or one of the tackles, and just get whatever they can get. And so when you hear reports that Howie Roseman wants to move up, I don't think that's false. And we talked about who could they move up for. Again, we initially had a trade a little bit later where they went up for Kyle Hamilton, but we were talking about it. And we have the Eagles trading up to pick 6 with Carolina and taking Derek Stingley. And Carolina gets the 15th pick, round 2, pick 51, and then Andre Dillard. So they get their tackle. They can throw in there. What's Dillard's upside? Who knows? He's probably better than who they have, though. And the Eagles get their corner to go across from Darius Slay, especially in a position group where it feels like the consensus is Stingley at 6, and Jack can touch more on him specifically. If he's healthy, could be a steal. Stingley's talent, they talk about how his talent fell off. Well, he's been playing hurt for the last 2 years. So if he has the time to get fully healthy, this could be a steal. But you want to just discuss this a little more?
Yeah, so like Zach said, there was a whole lot of reach picks here and trades in other ways. And if the tackle's not here, Carolina, although they're in a position with a roster to win now, still could use a day 2 pick, as they are missing them most likely from the Sam Darnold trade. And Dillard, I mean, I wasn't awfully impressed with him last season, but he really can't be worse than what Carolina has. I mean, if the goal here is, the Panthers owner Tepper came out today and said that Darnold is a good quarterback. I don't know what he's watching, but if you really want to convince yourself that Darnold is a good quarterback, protect him. You want to see what he can do, keep him off his back. Just like the first couple picks with Neal to the Texans, Icky to the Jags, and Cross to the Jets. It's about keeping your guy on his feet. And for the Eagles, this is about getting a guy that I think, if he can stay healthy, would have been the first overall choice this year. There's no prospect here that's like screaming Myles Garrett superstardom or anything, Nick Bosa or anything like that. But after Stingley's freshman year, he was the type of player that people thought he might be one of the only corners in history to go 1 overall. And I get that you're trading up to take a risk on injury here, but if you can stay healthy, you have a solid number 2, and you don't have to worry about Slay leaving or Slay retiring, because Stingley is going to take on that role and probably then some. It sounds like whatever he was dealing with is fully healed now, and I think that showed out at his pro day. But I think he got a lot of hate for sitting out of the combine, because I think the reports were that he could have competed, but that he didn't feel comfortable doing so. And I'm not a fan of players sitting out of the combine, but in his specific case, I don't have an issue with it, because his last couple of years have been injury riddled. So if he felt like this isn't it, then it isn't it. For him, it's got to be about staying healthy, because the minute he's playing injury free, this is probably the first pick this year.
Plus, one thing to think about is if Stingley does get back to that freshman year form, and even if he's somewhere in between, him and Slay form one of the better 1-2 corners in the league. And something that, Philly has missed for years is a good starting 2 corner. It seems like they've missed and they've missed and they missed on either picks in like Sidney Jones or free agent signings besides Slay, or I guess he was a trade. But so now they take another shot at it, and something that they've so desperately missed is that 1-2 corner because Avonte Maddox is not it. And Zach McPherson didn't show a lot. He didn't play a lot, so I assume that he's not
I mean,
there.
he's a fourth rounder, so he's a developmental piece. But I mean, this is highly going to depend on if Jonathan Gannon decides that you don't need to play your corners 15 yards off every snap.
And the last thing to consider for this is they could draft Stingley and sign Matthew. And then and the flip is if they draft Hamilton, there's not a corner out there.
Gilmore, but it doesn't sound like he wants to go to Philly.
Right.
Or wait, no, Gilmore's off.
Yeah, so there's not a corner out there equivalent to Matthew's talent at safety. So if you were to draft Hamilton, I don't even know what the next corner you would be looking at is. But instead, you can take Stingley and sign Matthew, and now that secondary is looking pretty good. And they still, not to mention, they still have another first to do whatever they want to, and we'll get to that later. But then at pick 7, we have back-to-back trades, and this is a trade we've had a few times because for us it just makes sense. We have the Packers trading with the Giants, who have repeatedly said over and over they want to get out of this pick. And I truly believe when it involves money that it's not about amassing more picks. For a team that has a lot of picks already, I think they don't want to have to deal with restructures. And maybe that's a smart move. So we have the same trade I think we've had over and over is Jordan Love finally being moved after much anticipation. The 22nd pick from the Raiders that they got in Davante Adams trade, and their first next year going to the Giants for pick 7 and a 4th rounder. The reports that Atlanta has a lot of interest in Jordan Love may be true, and you could easily mock the same trade a pick later. But for now, we have the Giants doing this. Jordan Love under Dable makes so much sense. And we have them taking a different pick this time. Initially, when we've done this before, we've gone with Chris Olave, which probably is a surprising choice, but we think he fills in Davante Adams almost mirrored. However, the one thing that the Packers have done is they haven't had consistent number ones that are all the same in forever. When you think about who their top receivers have been, before Davante Adams, it was Jordy Nelson. Adams and Nelson are nothing alike in their play style. And before that, it was Greg Jennings. Whoops. And those three are not the same receivers. So we think they go Garrett Wilson to add a different type of alpha and do different stuff, where Wilson is a menace after the catch, but not as short-handed as someone like Olave or Davante Adams. It just allows them to try something new with all that expensive quarterback play that they're going to get now with Rodgers. Not that they weren't paying him before, but now they've really sold their soul to him. And I feel like Wilson is probably the 3rd or 4th best receiver in this class. I know I believe, in the minority there, although the rankings are all over the place when you get a feel out there. However, it can't be ignored that he's fast, he's a good route runner, and he's wicked after the catch. So all of it makes sense. And as Jack pointed out, they can transition to a more RPO style offense with the 2 running backs, and everything just seems to make sense here. And Green Bay stops playing around with all that, oh, you don't have any first round picks to throw to. Well, now they have the 7th overall pick and the first receiver taken. That was a lot, but Jack, you want to add something before we keep going?
For me, we recorded a podcast about potential quarterback landing spots, and I don't think it ever got out due to whatever happened. But Jordan Love, for me, the sleeper pick was New York because he's not Josh Allen, but I feel like he resembles what Josh Allen was coming out with: the high athleticism, the ability to run, just like how he's built, and the arm strength. And obviously it's not of that caliber, but it's in the range, I guess.
Not to mention the same issues too, the accuracy concerns and the turnovers, stuff like that.
Yeah. And you bring in Dable and Kafka, and now Tyrod is sitting there for 2 years. Why not take a risk here? On the flip side, for Green Bay, like Zach said, I'm highly convinced that they are going to move, or that they should move to a more run first approach with Jones and A.J. Dillon. I mean, you look year after year, and It seems like Rodgers struggles in the playoffs, so why not take the pressure off his hands? And Garrett Wilson, from what Zach has explained, sounds like he has the potential to have drop issues in the pros, and but that he's really good after the catch. So if you do transition to more of an RPO type offense, Wilson seems to be the guy that you can get a bubble screen to, and he'll get you a first down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do believe he'll have some drop issues. Think, someone like Deontay Johnson, where he goes through stretches where he drops them. But Wilson can also take a bubble screen, as you said, and not even get a first down. He can make three people miss and get it to the house at any moment. So I think while Wilson is not our first overall receiver, this is, an interesting fit for a team that might, for a young head coach that might want to look to run it back, but in a different style, to try and see if they can find something else that'll work. I mean, San Francisco beat them with Devo being a prime candidate for that, and Garrett Wilson can do similar stuff. So we're gonna just go right along to the Falcons here. Again, for whatever reason, if the Packers don't trade up to 7, they could trade up to 8. I mean, this same exact trade can be made here if Atlanta's serious about going after Jordan Love. While I don't like the fit as much, it does allow them to, if that hypothetical trade, it allows them to amass more picks because that team is so bad, and also not waste a first on a quarterback this year and still address so many other positions. But we have them staying put for now and going with Chris Olave. He can fill in the Calvin Ridley role and, in my opinion, be better. He's faster than Ridley. And I think they're both equal route runners, if not a little bit of edge to Olave. That might be recency bias. And he's a dependable target that, even if it's Mariota, when you're talking about the offense that they're probably going to run, Olave's elite route running, the ability to take a slant and run past people, and plus I think he pairs really well with Kyle Pitts.
At the end of the day, you look at where Atlanta sits in the draft order, and there's no reason that they should be at 8. They should be picking top 3 this year. The fact that they won as many games as they did is kind of sad on the league, and Atlanta's just not ready to drop a quarterback in yet. I like the fact that Mariota is on a 2-year deal, right? Because it gives you time to build the team. And if Mariota ends up, revitalizing his career, then that's great. But right now, to drop in a quarterback with as bad a roster as they have would be a mistake. Ridley just got suspended for gambling. Not that he was going to be on the team next year anyways, but right now their receivers are Zacchaeus, Bird, and not including Pitts.
Frank Darby.
Yeah, who knows? You need an alpha one, especially with Ridley not there. And no matter who the quarterback is, Olave is going to go out and do his thing.
And the other thing I want to add is, I mentioned this before, but if you're Atlanta, a lot of people have them taking an edge. It doesn't help at this point. Their defensive line is not horrible. They have, Marlon Davidson was a day 2 pick 2 years ago. Grady Jarrett is there. It's just not the first round pick here. And when you're looking at what you need, the receiver room is so bad. If you were to really pass on a wide receiver here for an edge rusher, it's a mistake in my eyes, and it would not help you out. I just don't believe, if it's not Myles Garrett, a guy that can by himself get 20 sacks, if it's a 10-sack guy, what's the point at this? If it's a 10-sack guy to a 12-sack guy versus a receiver who can come in and catch 100 passes as a rookie, I just don't think the value is anywhere close. So anyway, Seattle is up, and Seattle is going to Seattle. Go ahead, Jack.
All right. So at 9, we have the Seattle Seahawks taking Trevor Penning. I personally am not high on Trevor Penning. I think that a lot of people are in love with this physicality and pancakes and throwing people around. But when I turn on the tape, he was not even impressive at the FCS level. And when you watch when he's the most aggressive, it's usually because he's getting beat. And his options are try to throw the guy or get embarrassed. And I mean, you can think differently, but I just think that it's an overcompensation for his inability to block somebody. And it's not to say that he can't be a starting tackle in the league, but it is not going to be this year. I think Penning is a great value pick if he makes it to the second round, but um, two things went into this pick. The first was, how messed up would it be if Seattle trades Russell Wilson and with their first round pick without Wilson, they take an offensive lineman? And the second thought was, so to us, Mike Mayock had this philosophy that he was smarter than everyone else. It's why he took guys like Farrell at 4 and guys like Abram and Damon Arnett and pick a name. And we think that John Snyder, if you look through the last couple of years, has that same kind of mentality where he's like, I'm just going to take my guy now because I'm smarter than everyone else. And to the consensus, it's a reach. It's like, what the heck are you doing? And I think that this is exactly what the Penning pick is. It's the lineman that Russell Wilson never got. And this is Schneider saying, well, the first 3 tackles are off the board, and I think I'm smarter than everyone, so I'm going to try to get the steal here, which I don't think he is. I think that this would be insane, but maybe they try to take a swing and they just hopefully think that they look smarter than everyone else.
Another thing to consider is this might even be a different tackle. Knowing the Seahawks, this could be someone out of left field that you didn't expect, kind of how like they took Rashad Penny 2 or 3 rounds early. So we think it's Penning, but it could be someone out of nowhere, knowing how Seattle likes to draft. So the Jets are up here at 10. We have them taking Trayvon Walker. As I just said earlier, am not a Trayvon Walker fan as a top 10 pick, a top 15 pick. However, we were talking about this, and I almost wonder if he gets taken and gets converted to an off-ball or like a weak side linebacker that pass rushes occasionally, someone like Darius Leonard. Walker ran a 4.5 at 270 pounds. That's insane. He is a wild athlete, but he's not a pass rusher. He's not a good one. So if you were to take him, if you're the Jets in their system, where edge rusher, defensive end is not really a massive need based on who they have, you could take Walker, ask him to drop to 260. So then he's even faster, but he's 260 pounds. Like, that's insane. And you can try him on a linebacker, and you can slowly develop his pass rushing. Now, I wouldn't advise to do it this way, but think how the Cardinals used Hassan Reddick. They drafted him as an edge, moved him to middle linebacker, but I'm not saying to move him to middle linebacker. But he also developed his pass rushing while he was a linebacker, and then he ends up being a double-digit sack guy. I see Trayvon Walker following a very similar path, but I also think he'd be a very good linebacker. And, you know, he did the defensive back drills at the Georgia Pro Day. That's insane for a guy that's 270. So if you ask him to cut down, I don't think 250 is realistic. I think that's a lot of weight to cut. But if he gets to 260, then he runs maybe a 4.45 or a 4.48 at 260 pounds. That is an insane athlete to be, you know, maybe he's even like Isaiah Simmons in that he's really positionless. You just figure out a way to use him. So while I really don't believe he's worth a high pick this draft, I think the Jets probably look at him and think we can mold him and try to get the best version out of him that no one seems to be discussing.
I just want to throw in, so I've mentioned this before, I'm a Georgia fan, so I watched a lot of Walker. And Zach is not wrong by any stretch of the imagination. He does not have pass rushing moves. He will try to basically run past you. And the times that he did get sacks or he got the pressure, if you watch the film, it's Georgia sending him on a stunt. It's them standing him up in the middle. It's whatever. But Walker, if you watch him, he has the ability to cover. Ends don't do that. He has the ability to drop into coverage. He has the athleticism. He just needs to probably drop, like Zach said, probably 10 pounds. And for him, a guy who's used to stunting, who's used to being stood up or blitzing from various parts of the front, moving him to Sam or Will linebacker is not the craziest thing to think, because a blitzing Sam is a lot different than a pass rushing defensive end. And if Walker's thing is speed and trying to just get to the quarterback and find the hole, letting him blitz from a backer spot makes a lot more sense than watching him get manhandled by like Trent Williams.
Right. And if you were to leave him as a pass rusher only, you could be looking at 2 or 3 years before he becomes super relevant, like Rashawn Gary in Green Bay. But if you move him to linebacker, you could have him at, to me, it's Darius Leonard like, maybe even right away. It depends how quickly he picks it up. But it looks like he's already doing the drills that you would need to get him to work on. So if you can have Darius Leonard at pick 10, I think that's a good pick. But if they leave him at edge, I think it's a bad pick. So it's just kind of, which team that takes him maybe realizes this. But we're going to, Washington take at pick 11, taking Drake London. This has been like the
This is
same
every
pick.
mock.
It just makes sense. The only thing that's changed is Drake London actually did his workout, and he looked really good. And I think he pairs really well with McLaurin and pairs well with Wentz. There's reports that teams might want to trade up for London ahead of this pick, like Dallas. That's an awful lot to give up. I like London, but that's a lot. So as of right now, until it happens, we're not going to predict this one. So London joins the receiver room, and their offense looks a lot better than it did a year ago.
Just to add in here, Ron Rivera does not travel to pro days. He has not done it since he became a coach. He traveled to 2 pro days this year that I know of, Ohio State and Drake London's. With Garrett Wilson and Olave off the board, I feel like you can just lock it in now.
You best believe. So actually, speaking of that, we saw a question posed about what are the definites, what are the obvious picks? And for us, this may be the only one. Unless someone does a crazy trade up and takes Drake London, this might be the most, I don't want to say guaranteed because no pick is ever guaranteed, but it just makes the most sense of any pick in my eyes, at least. I mean, we've had this hasn't changed since day one. So unless, like I said, unless Dallas does a Dallas and gives up a crazy amount to trade with, Seattle or the Jets or even the Giants, I think London to Washington is a pretty strong scenario. But so the Vikings are up next at 12. We have them taking Kyle Hamilton, which could end up being the steal of the draft. Jack, you want to talk about this match or this matchup?
So Minnesota is missing a lot in the secondary. I think they're missing a number 2 and a number 3 corner. They're missing another safety because Xavier Woods went to Carolina. I hear the Vikings are in love with McDuffie. I just don't see how you're passing on Kyle Hamilton. If he makes it to you, it's a blessing. And Hamilton he's huge. He's athletic. I know he ran slow, but he's versatile. He can do it all. And for Minnesota, you form probably the best safety tandem in the league. I mean, people would argue Poyer and Hyde, but Hamilton and Harrison Smith would be scary. And the truth of the matter is Harrison Smith has been an all-pro, I believe. Yeah, I know he's been a Pro Bowler. If Hamilton can learn from Harrison Smith, you are not going to miss anything when Harrison Smith retires. You probably even gain something because Smith is not the size of Hamilton. They both came from Notre Dame, which I think is kind of funny, but this is the pick to make because your back end is secure. You have two safeties that can come up and play the box, and you're already preparing for the future. And when this offseason started, when O'Connell took over, there was a lot of questions around, well, who's going to get traded? Is Danielle Hunter still going to be there? Is Eric Kendrick still going to be there? Is Harrison Smith going to be there? And one of the first players that he commented on was Harrison Smith and the leadership that he brings and that he wants him to be a cornerstone of this defense. And if he's thought of that highly on this defense, then you're probably already afraid of losing him. And Hamilton is going to be the guy that replaces what you believe that Harrison Smith has been for this team.
So we're going to just move along to the Texans here with we have them taking George Karlaftis. Now, you might get your eyebrows might raise here because Kayvon Thibodeau is still on the board. However, in our eyes, Karlaftis is right there with Aiden Hutchinson as the best edge in this draft. But the reason we have the Texans going him over Thibodeau is the fit. The Texans have issues all over, and Karlaftis is able to play and stand up and play interior in a pass rushing situation, or even not. I mean, he's got the size to play a tackle position if you want him to. I think I would have him at end and then kick inside, but that's something Thibodeau can't do. He can't kick inside if you need him to. And I also think Thibodeau is an overrated prospect with, questionable interviews at the least. Karlaftis comes right in. He starts at end, and he helps you out all across the defensive line, and that's something that others that are left cannot do. Do you want to touch on this?
No, I'm good.
The last thing, real quick, this could be any position. Realistically, it could be any except quarterback.
I was going to say, we debated receiver here for a while.
And this could be another offensive lineman even. Like, we've done that before where they've doubled the O-line just because they don't have much of anything. I mean, the Falcons are pretty bad, but the Texans are probably worse. So we have the Baltimore Ravens taking Jordan Davis. This is another one we've had a lot. Davis is a super safe prospect with a lot of upside in the pass rushing. He's going to be an elite run defender right away in a division that likes to run the ball. And he could probably get you 5 sacks. I mean, Calais Campbell re-signed. It's a good guy to learn pass rushing from with his giant frame from another guy, Jordan Davis, that has a giant frame. So there's not, this is kind of a no-brainer if he's there for us. You want to comment on that?
The only thing I want to touch on here is, as Zach's brought up before, is we saw the question of who are the locks, and every time that Jordan Davis falls to Baltimore, it's run it to the podium. It's Jordan Davis, and yes, this is, you could say, a lock of the draft, but no one knows if he's actually going to be here at 14. With the way that the 6'6", 3 whatever he weighs, Jordan Davis is, people should be all over that. If you're high on the way that Walker tested, then Jordan Davis should be in consideration for a top 2 pick. The problem is that no one knows what he's going to be able to do as a pass rusher in the pros. It has nothing to do with about his ability to stop the run. It's, can he rush the passer? And we've seen him go anywhere from like 2 or 3 to 32. And it's how you view it. But if he does fall to 14, I'd argue that this is the only other lock.
I would agree. And Carolina, with their trade with Philly, is up, and we have them taking the first quarterback of the draft. And that, for us, again, is Sam Howell. This is one of our bigger predictions. And we think, again, that the Panthers would take a tackle at 6 if they had their way. However, they trade back and get that extra day 2 pick. And they decided to go with Howell, who, for us, and for me specifically, because I did a lot of the quarterback scouting, is a nice middle ground in safety and upside. I think he has the upside of Russell Wilson in so many ways. I mean, he throws the deep ball. He's got good arm strength. He's got underrated mobility. Despite rushing for 800 yards, it feels like it's just not talked about as much. And, you hear everyone talk about Corral and Ritter's mobility. Well, Howell's a better runner. I mean, purely, even if they have a similar athleticism, Howell is a very good runner with the ball. And I think he can come in and he can compete right away. But even if you want to give Darnold another shot, Howell is not Ritter or Corral that I think need to sit. And he's not Pickett, who is wasted by sitting. So Howell can learn what he needs to learn. And even if it's something as simple as taking more snaps under center in practice, and he can, take over for Darnold when you realize it's not about the offensive line, that Darnold just isn't that good. So for me, and I think with that offense, the positions and the pieces that are in place, it should be a very good offense. And I think with Howell, it can be. So you want to add anything? All right. So then the Saints are up next, and this is a repeat pick for us as well. We have them going Jamison Williams. We have debated, and as is the NFL world, whether the Saints made this trade with Philly with a quarterback in mind. With Willis and Pickett being here, although for me it'd be more Willis, they might reconsider what their plan was. But as of right now, we have them just taking 2 positions of need that's not quarterback, with Jamison Williams being the first one, a guy that is a pretty good route runner. He's lightning quick, good hands, and a lot of people say he would be the top wide receiver if he hadn't gotten hurt. He wouldn't be mine. However, we comped him to Terry McLaurin, so you'd be pairing Terry McLaurin with Michael Thomas, and that's a great one too.
The only thing I want to add here is that Winston, in his time last year before getting hurt, showed that he can run the offense, and this team is ready to win now, and they have been for about 5 or 6 years now. And the truth of the matter is, they've gotten the bad side of the stick in multiple situations where they probably could have a Super Bowl or two right now. But they continue to somehow keep this team intact with what I'd argue is the best defense in football right now. And all Winston needs to do is play at an average level, and they're playoff bound because the defense is going to continue to carry that team. They carried it with Trevor Siemian. They carried it with Taysom Hill. Nothing changes.
And Winston did that without Michael Thomas, so he was throwing to the likes of Marquez Callaway and Deontay
Hardy.
I was going to say Harris. I keep forgetting his new name. And guys like that. So if you add Michael Thomas being back and you add Jameson Williams, who knows? Even without, potentially being without Alvin Kamara, which that's a whole nother thing. They might address a running back on, day 2 or
Day three.
But regardless, the offense should look a lot better. And Jack's right, the defense is very high end, and we'll come back to that with their next pick. The Chargers are up next. We have them taking Kenyan Green. We had them going wide receiver multiple times, and they still could, but we personally don't believe at this moment that there's a receiver there that, like, we had them going Garrett Wilson a couple times because he offered a whole different skill set to the other two. And, there's guys that do a little bit different, but it's not as dramatic as Garrett Wilson, who adds speed and after the catch ability. So we have them going with Kenyan Green, and this is a Jack scout. So,
I mean, in terms of weaponry, Herbert retains pretty much his entire offense from last year. Where the difference is the O-line, and this is the overlying theme of this mock is protect your own quarterback, especially Herbert, because he plays in – if the AFC is a bloodbath, but the AFC West is the heart and soul of that bloodbath. The Chargers line is in kind of rough shape right now. They also released Brian Bulaga. Green has the ability to play all 5 spots on the line, and left tackle and center are currently held, which is great. So Green will just go in and compete and end up wherever they need him. I think personally he'll be a better tackle, but if he's got to play guard, then so be it. I'm sure he'll be fine.
And Justin Herbert is a national treasure. So
absolutely.
The Eagles are at 18. The reports we've seen are that they want to trade up from their first pick and trade back from this pick, which might be true, but we couldn't really find a fit here for a trade. Maybe someone trades up for one of the quarterbacks to jump ahead of Pittsburgh. But really, all of a sudden, there's not a lot of teams that need a quarterback, especially in a year where there's just not, as much as I like Willis's upside, he's not so elite that you just bypass the concern. So we have the Eagles staying put and taking Treylon Burks, a much-needed addition to that wide receiver room. He adds size, he adds muscle, and he adds – people are talking about his Deebo Samuel-like play style. I don't know that he's that elusive, but he can take bubble screens and run to the house or run through people. So I think he adds a lot of different things. He can be a downfield threat. He's got – his jumps weren't that impressive, but he basically has oven mitts for hands, at least on tape. And he still made some crazy catches. So he's got a large catch radius, which is good for a quarterback with inaccuracy issues like Jalen Hurts, who they just seem convinced on. Now, maybe, again, Philly still could be a shocking quarterback potential. With Malik Willis here, it really – I just want to see them do it. However, we're assuming that they are convinced Hurts has at least one more year, and they picked up the extra first next year's insurance in case he's not. And you just make the team better because that receiver room is awful. Beyond Devontae Smith, I mean, Zach Pascal is their big signing, and he's horrible. Rager is probably gone. Arcega Whiteside moved to tight end, which I think is a decent move. But, Burks adds a lot that they're missing.
The only thing I want to throw in here has nothing to do with Burks, but I read a report that said that the Bengals might use Jesse Bates as a trade piece to move up. So the only trade scenario that was ever mentioned here was one that I texted to Zach where I said, what if the Eagles and the Bengals flip and the Eagles end up with Jesse Bates? And the Saints come up and get one of the corners because everyone not named Sauce or Stingley are still here.
The Bengals,
What the heck did I say?
Saints.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So I think that it's certainly possible. The Eagles have the money to sign Bates, and Bates is certainly a guy that would fit well in Philly because Anthony Harris, I mean, I guess he'd play the other safety, but could certainly be replaced. But that's all I have.
yeah, I mean, I would be kind of surprised if that ends up being the case where they use Jesse Bates because I think he's such a loved player in Cincinnati. But, it wasn't Jesse Bates' fault that they lost.
I mean, he is a loved player there, but at the same time, there's been no talk of a contract extension, and that if
Yeah,
I was a
you got
Bengals
a
fan,
point
that would
there.
worry me.
It would be interesting. It would be a smart move by Howie. And if they could if he could just trade that first and Jesse Bates, yeah, I would do it. I would do it in a heartbeat. We don't want to do that until, that's one of those trades where it's like,
It's
is
more
it
of a
legitimate?
hypothetical, yeah.
Yeah. So the Saints are up with their second pick. They need a tackle. However, for us, the value isn't there. And we have them going Travis Jones. He is my second-rated defensive tackle ahead of Devontae Wyatt. I know, shocking. But Travis Jones shows insane strength on film. He can be a true anchor for a team whose two tackles Onyemata is decent, but then, besides him, it's not super strong. And Jones can eat up double team blocks. He has the strength to provide upside as a pass rusher if he could ever develop it. And he's, people are talking about Devontae Wyatt as an athlete. Travis Jones ran a good 40 at 350 pounds, I think he is, and he looks like it's all muscle. So I think Jones is someone that's not really being talked about a ton. I've seen him up here and there as a first rounder, and we've had him in the first round before, but I think he could be drafted higher than people expect. And I think the Saints just complete the one thing they're really missing on the defensive unit and try and go for the best defense in football, along with a much improved offense. And I think that's what they would result in. And they can take a flyer on an offensive lineman if they have any picks left. I mean, that's one thing the Saints have shown is done a really good job of finding offensive linemen in the draft.
The only thing to add here is that Cam Jordan has been a nightmare for quarterbacks with minimal inside rush. So regardless of if Jones develops a pass rush in year one or not, he's still taking up bodies because you don't want to leave him one-on-one.
Yeah, he has the strength to back up your guard. Him and Jordan Davis are the only two tackles I saw that are in the upper level that rarely, if ever, got backed up. And if you watch the Senior Bowl tape, nobody beat him in a one-on-one. He terrorized the guards, and probably tackles at the Senior Bowl practices. So I agree. And with Davenport, when he's healthy, looking like he's emerging, that could be a very good defensive line. So Steelers here have their dream scenario, I have to imagine. And I know there's reports, and I think Jack has told me that they would take Pickett over Willis. I would be shocked. I know I've said that a few times about a few different things. That would be a very big mistake because you have Pickett already in Mitch Trubisky. You just do. Maybe Pickett's a little bit better. I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. But Willis can sit. You have Trubisky for 2 years. Willis can sit for 2 years if he needs to, but the upside could be enormous. And, I've heard some people say that Pittsburgh needs to trade up for another edge rusher. They have Alex Highsmith. I know he hasn't done a lot yet, but he was a day 2 pick, I believe. And it's just not the biggest need. And without a big run-stuffing tackle here, because I don't think Devontae Wyatt is an elite run defender, it's got to be Malik Willis. They haven't needed a quarterback like this since they drafted Ben. So then they just go right back and they draft someone with a different skill set, and Mike Tomlin can run the offense how he wants it, not to Ben's play style.
I believe in Mitch. No further comment.
I believe him in too, and that's why I think Willis makes so much sense, because you can just give him all the time in the world to develop, and then if Trubisky ends up being like a Pro Bowl talent, then you have the luxury and you can decide what to do at that point. The Patriots are up next. We've had this pick a lot. Kayvon Thibodeau. Look, I know the media is hyping him up, but I swear every single interview I've seen is him saying, I'm the best. And I texted Jack this, but it just reminds me of the movie Draft Day when they talked about the quarterback and want to know how many people went to his birthday party. It just feels like Thibodeau could rub teammates and coaches the wrong way. I know he seems like a very hard worker. Off the field, he seems like a guy that gives back to the community. But when you start every interview, like he told Bucky Brooks, he started his interview saying, I know you have me 10 on your list, but I know you secretly think I'm the best in this draft. And he was asked what sets him apart, and his answer was, I'm the best in this draft. It just, you see other prospects ask these questions, and their answers are different. Aiden Hutchinson, when asked how does he compare himself to other players, what sets him apart, his response was, I don't like comparing myself to others. I can only tell you what I can do. There's just different ways to answer these questions, and maybe I'm way off, but on top of that thing just seems wrong. I also think the tape is not that impressive. I think he looks like a very good athlete who needs far more development than anyone seems to admit. And they're pushing him as this top pick because he's been in the media since he was in high school. And I think it's gone to his head. I think some players stay humble and some players don't. Trevor Lawrence seemed to stay humble about being, the next elite quarterback from high school. But I never heard him in his interviews come off like a know-it-all, like I'm the best there is. So to me, it's just a lot of these things could cause Thibodeau to fall. And I think New England's the perfect spot for him from a character perspective. He talks about wanting a coach that's going to challenge him. Well, Belichick will do that. So to me, it's a very good match for a team that does need pass rushing help.
As a person and as a coach myself, I'm very high on character in people, and in this specific case in prospects. And for that reason, Thibodeau falls for me. I didn't really watch him because, Zach did the heavy scouting on the edges, and quite honestly, I don't care for Thibodeau. So I don't think I would have watched him anyways. But I don't know. Just to Zach's point, draft day character, it's a screaming red flag for me. And if it wants to keep giving his robot answers, Belichick is the perfect coach for him.
And I just, this isn't about off the field stuff. He seems like a decent guy off the field. He seems like a hard worker. It's just when you say you're the best every single chance you get, either it's not truly having confidence in yourself, but there's just different ways to answer the questions. And he's doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on this narrative he's trying to force. And maybe a team will just take him anyway. Maybe we're wrong. But if we were in control, there's other edges, but B, there's just other positions I would take instead in general. Because again, the edge class is so deep. If it's between Thibodeau in the first or someone like Nick Bonito in the second, I would rather have an elite corner, an elite safety, and an elite wide receiver, and then the secondary edge in the second round or even in the third round. So the Giants, this is their trade projected pick with the Packers. We have them taking Tyler Linderbaum. Jack, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So Linderbaum is a guy that is talked about as having the potential to be an all-pro starting his rookie year, and I absolutely believe it. Linderbaum is really strong overall as a run blocker, as a pass blocker. His ability to get out in front of plays like screens and tosses and all that type of stuff. And the reason that he's not going higher in our mock and in a lot of people's mocks is because of his size. And there are a lot of centers in this league that are not the biggest guys. And as we continue to go into the future and as the game continues to evolve, you're just not going to find the bigger guys that rely as much on power. The game today is just going a lot more on speed and athleticism, and you see it when they talk about guys like Thibodeau and Trayvon Walker and whoever else. And Linderbaum just shows in his play why his size doesn't matter. Is he going to get pushed back by bigger guys in the league? Probably. But if he can hold his own for 5 seconds while the quarterback gets rid of it, it is what it is. But the truth is, all he needs is enough to maintain his position. As long as he's not getting beat, and it's not like he's coming in at 270 pounds. He's close to 300. So this isn't like him being 20 pounds underweight or whatever, like whatever happened to Myjai Sanders at the combine. Linderbaum is of reasonable size. But the Giants are bringing in all of these like lower end O-line signings like Feliciano and Max Garcia. And how is that? If you're committed to letting Daniel Jones get a chance, that is like the saddest way to go about giving your guy a chance. Go get him some legitimate help. Like Andrew Thomas is a good left tackle, but this is the same situation that Davis Mills is in. He's got a left tackle and a bunch of nobodies. So come on, get it together.
Well said. The Giants, they need a line. They need a decent amount, but so we have them going with the best center. The Cardinals, there's a few repeat picks here because really for the back end of the first, it's not much has changed in our eyes. We have them taking Sky Moore. Again, he adds so much that the Cardinals receiving room doesn't have. It could be a defensive piece, but Moore adds speed, route running. He can be a slot. I think he can play outside, although I think he probably fits into Arizona as the slot, especially for an offense that plays the spread. And DeAndre Hopkins is getting hurt more and more and more, so you need someone else there. It doesn't sound like Isabella's the guy. They have Antonio Wesley, and if there was one more that was like, oh, Rondale. Rondale's more of a gadget in my eyes. And they haven't done anything else. So it just makes me feel like they're looking receiver. And I think Moore fits in. And who knows what's going on with the Kyler situation. They picked up his 5th year. But assuming he plays, this is the pick.
Nothing to add there. Moving down the line, Dallas at 24. We had them taking Trent McDuffie. To a lot of people, it's kind of weird seeing McDuffie in the 20s. However, for a lot of the guys that fall in our mock, and you'll see it when we get to the second round too, is it's just teams taking bigger needs. And like, I know that not every team is going to draft for need, but for us, like, it's a matter of addressing what you need. Like the Jets and the Texans don't have to go O-line. They could take best player available, but that doesn't make sense for what they have at the quarterback position. And McDuffie is falling as a result of just teams going with different needs. And personally, I have Kyler Gordon ranked higher than McDuffie, just because I saw more out of him in man coverage. I think that he's probably the best run game presence corner in this class. However, Dallas is going to Dallas, and I think that they take the upside pick with McDuffie. And even if he doesn't hit the ceiling that everyone thinks he has, he should still be a better corner than Trayvon Diggs. Don't come at me for that. That is a mountain I will die on. Zach, anything then?
At the very least, he's going to be better than Anthony Brown, the guy that held like 8 times in the playoff game, pass interferences, and who knows what he was thinking. So I think McDuffie probably starts at the number 2 right away, and then he could easily surpass Diggs once people realize just attack him with double moves every time. And yeah, so the Buffalo Bills are up next. We have back-to-back corners with Jack's number 3 corner, Kyler Gordon, going. You want to talk about the fit?
Back-to-back Washington corners.
Yeah.
So for me, this is a dream scenario for Buffalo. Kyler showed a nice balance of man and zone, which is kind of weird because Washington plays about 90% zone. But he looked good while he was in man. I think that there's a couple technique things to clean up, like when he looks back and stuff like that. I think it's just building different habits from being a primary zone corner. But for Buffalo, who's going to see New York and Miami and New England, who's famous for running the football, I think Gordon is the ideal pick here. He loves to come up in the running game and make the tackle. I think that he could slip into the nickel spot on a team where he can blitz and just kind of play closer to the line of scrimmage and be a little bit more of a presence, kind of like a Mike Hilton. That was my comp for him. However, Buffalo already has their nickel in Taron Johnson, but I think Gordon just gives them some flexibility and a nice playmaker who I think has a higher floor than McDuffie. Where his ceiling lies, I'm not sure, but Tre'Davious White should be a nice mentor for him.
So the Titans are up next. We have them taking Devontae Wyatt. I am not overly impressed with Wyatt. I think he tested really good as an athlete. I don't think it shows as much on tape. That being said, the Titans' interior defensive line is horrible after Simmons, and he can be a run defender, but he's not amazing at it. They say he has pass rushing upside, but again, I think it's banking on athleticism. Walker's athleticism shows. I don't think Wyatt shows as much. However, the Titans just need somebody there, and he's got good size, good speed, so they're taking a gamble here. And I think this is a true boom or bust pick, but it is a need. So, and they really, the Titans, for the offense they run, they don't have a ton of other needs, at least in my eyes. So I think Wyatt does make sense, or just a tackle in general. If Travis Jones were here, I think this would be the obvious pick. Do you have anything you want to throw in there?
We're good.
The Buccaneers at 27 take Jermaine Johnson. I've seen report after report where he could get taken higher than expected, and I think there is definitely potential there. For me, he's an elite run defender already. He's the best run defender of the edges, and he does have some pass rushing upside. I don't know how high of a pass rushing upside. He can probably reach double digit, but he has an elite element to his game already that a lot of the edges don't have. And he also has flexibility. He can stand up. He can play a true end. And he could probably kick inside, although I would probably keep him at end. And the Buccaneers need an end badly. They have their pass rushing linebackers, but they're missing. I think Anthony Nelson is a starter, which is a problem. But the Buccaneers have shown over and over that they can develop pass rushers out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, but Shaq Barrett had his season, and he's developed there. Joe Tryon had a good rookie season in spurts. JPP had a career revival there. So I think it shows that Johnson's pass rushing will develop with time. And, yeah, I could see him going much higher. I just don't know where. I really don't. Maybe New England takes him instead of Thibodeau. But, again, this is how the board's falling. I think edges in general will fall. So
the one thing I want to add in real quick is that Johnson had double-digit sacks this year, I believe, but it's on 1 year. So that's where it's more not proven pass rush. It's upside. But the kid made a career move by transferring out of Georgia, because if he got mixed in with Walker and Davis, Wyatt, you pick a name. If he got mixed in with that group, we're talking probably a day 2 pick for Johnson. He's not probably even in consideration. I mean, if he never committed to Georgia and he went to a place and had double-digit sack seasons, yeah, I could see him being a top 5 pick. But for right now, I just think that his cards are not falling the way that some of the other guys have.
Not to mention, to my knowledge, he's the highest profile Last Chance U player there's ever been.
I did not know he was on Last Chance U. So
I saw a video that was saying he wasn't brought up because he wasn't a problem. Like, he just went and did his work and got out, and that's why he wasn't like a huge part of the show. But yeah, fun fact, he was on Last Chance U. The Packers are up next with their second pick after taking Garrett Wilson and trading up for him. And we have them taking Jamari Salyer.
So Salyer is not considered a first-round prospect by many. However, you can see the overlying theme here for anyone who's looked at our profiles. There's a lot of guys between the two of us that we have different grades on in comparison to analysts and compared to other people that are doing the same as we do. I think that, as I spoke on before, the reason Salyer is not being talked about as a first rounder is because he does not have the athleticism that guys like Icky and Linderbaum have. However, he is one of the guys that I talked about that you're not going to find much of anymore. Big, powerful lineman. And when we went through this pick, the Packers have their, I think he's a Pro Bowl guard, Elton Jenkins playing right tackle. I know that he can, but that doesn't mean he should. Salyer will come in on day one, and at the very least, I mean, he'll probably win because I didn't know many of the other names, but will at the very least come in and compete for a job. He's got flexibility at guard and tackle, and he's ready to go. So he's definitely a stronger run blocker due to the fact that that's 90% of what he did at Georgia, but should be able to protect Rodgers' right side.
After the Packers, we have the Kansas City Chiefs on for back-to-back picks. This is nothing new, as we've had these two picks, I believe, for 2 mocks now.
Dax Hill is new, but I'm just going to address these as a grouping because it's kind of the reason that they're here. We had them taking Lloyd and Dax Hill out of Michigan. We've touched on this a lot this offseason about how the AFC is a bloodbath and the AFC West is the heart of it. Kansas City's corners, their number one is L'Jarius Sneed, and their number 2 is Rashad Fenton. So you can see where that's going to be an issue. Their secondary is, I mean, they signed Justin Reed, and sure, he's a great player. But their other safety is Juan Thornhill, who has not developed in the slightest, nor has he been able to stay healthy. We think that Kansas City needs to take a different approach to playing defense in the AFC, and rather than relying on coverage and getting the sacks on coverage, you need to bring the heat, and you need to rely on your front seven more than your back end. Your back end is not going to last very long. Your front seven is going to make or break your season this year. They restructured Frank Clark, who there seems to be mixed opinions on him, but they have pieces along the front, starting with their 2 young backers in Gay and Bolton. And we think that, first off, Lloyd creates probably the best young grouping of linebackers in the league, with San Fran being the only team close. And Lloyd is a player who I've had some issues with on tape, starting with the fact that he does not seem to be all that great against the run. He gets manhandled by linemen. But the biggest red flag of them all was that he seemed to have effort concerns. And I hope I'm wrong, because this kid does have the potential to be, as I comped him, the next Michael Parsons, where he can play off ball, where he can rush the passer. He's going to help Spagnuolo give different looks to the front. Whether you line him up at end or any of the 3 backer spots, whatever you want to do with him. And Dax Hill is a guy who could take over Thornhill's safety spot, but I think more likely he takes over the nickel spot, and you just keep blitzing him. You let him be part of the consistent pressure that you need to bring in the front seven, and you just let him get after it. You want to add anything?
No, I think Kansas City didn't really address the defense much in free agency. We feel they actually did a decent job patching up the wide receiver room with the departure of Tyreek Hill. So it's probably not a receiver here. I'd be kind of surprised, especially since, the next receiver on our board is Christian Watson, but Marquez Valdez-Scantling is kind of a similar build, so it just doesn't make sense. And Scantling, Schuster, and Mecole Hardman are a fine 3. And plus they have Josh Gordon and a few others that, could have some upside. And with all the receivers that are left, they probably, if they're going to take a shot, maybe a 3rd rounder makes more sense. So the Bengals up next, we have them taking Kyer Elam.
So Elam is a prospect that, particularly today, Zach sent me. They're saying that Atwars could be taken as the cornerback 4, and I guess he'd be, if you don't count Dax, he would be the 5th cornerback taken for us. On coverage skills alone, he has the potential to be picked between 10 and 20. The issue is that I have never, I mean, this is the first year I'm like seriously like scouting prospects, but I have never, ever watched a player get bullied by receivers as much as I watched Elam on tape. He is like non-existent. There are 10 players on the field against run plays. He just gets eliminated. And his tackling is pretty bad too. So, I mean, if he wants to become a lockdown, that's great. He doesn't have to tackle much. But I think Cincinnati needs corner help. And Elam, to me, does have the potential to be a first-round grade. I kind of had him like a late first, early second. And the truth of the matter is he cannot be any worse than Eli Apple. So, book closed. Have a good night.
I'm convinced they've re-signed Eli Apple so that Jamar Chase can bully him in practice because he's the reason they lost the Super Bowl. Seattle Seahawks are in our mock are trading with the Lions. They are giving up both of their back-to-back second rounders in 40 and 41, and they're taking the quarterback here. Kenny Pickett has fell all this way. Look, you might not believe it. Don't be shocked we have Howell and Willis going. Don't be shocked if none of them go. There might be one quarterback. It's certainly a possibility where it just falls that way. But the Seattle Seahawks trade in and get that 5th-year potential at pick 32. They're a little bit different from the others where Drew Lock is not proven, and we are Drew Lock, believers, but Seattle might not be. And Pete Carroll, I highly, highly, highly doubt he's going to want to take on a massive project quarterback to develop. So they go and get Pickett, who can compete with Locke right away. And, you don't – that way you're not worried about if Locke doesn't work out, then you have to go to Geno Smith. And if Pickett beats him out, then you have a really, really good backup in Drew Lock and vice versa. So I think that Seattle – wants to do what I think Carroll's got 1 or 2 more years, and I think they're going to do everything they can to make it happen, even though I don't think they're anywhere near it. I think that they're going to convince themselves about it. If it's Ritter, I think it's a mistake. If it's Corral, I would just rather have Pickett if I'm Seattle.
Seattle is in a very interesting spot, to say the least. They've traded and released enough to where you can argue that they're in a rebuild. However, the roster as a whole still isn't. It depends on how you view some. They didn't
completely dismantle it.
Correct. I think it, depending on what happens within the next. I mean, I guess throughout the course of the draft, if they decide to get rid of Adams, or if whatever happens, I think that will determine which quarterback they take here. I think it's still a trade up, but as it sits, if you think you can still win, it's Pickett. If you start trading more pieces or blowing it up, it's most likely one of the others, just because then you're thinking long term.
I would agree with that. So this concludes our round 1 of our final mock. Keep an eye out for round 2, as that'll be out shortly.